All in one shot. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Please turn off your cell phones and pagers, put them on vibrate. If you do receive any calls, we ask that you please take them in the hallway Everything said during this meeting is recorded, so please speak clearly into the microphone. My apologies for not giving you the 5-minute warning. It is time to start, so would you please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance?
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
You may be seated. I now call the scheduled meeting of the Board of Adjustments to order. Would Mr. Bodie from the Planning and Development Office please describe the function and operation of the Board of Adjustments to our applicants in the audience?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. The Board of Adjustment is a quasi-judicial body established by the Board of County Commissioners under Chapter 62, Article 2, Division 4 of the Brevard County Code. The Board of Adjustment is empowered to hear requests for variances to the zoning regulation and the sign regulation in Chapter 62, Article 6, and Article 9. Pursuant to Florida Rules of Appellate Procedure, any person or persons jointly or severally aggrieved by any decision of the Board of Adjustment may, within 30 days after the date the order is signed, apply to a court of competent jurisdiction for appropriate relief. Mr. Chairman, you have 6 items on your agenda today.
Thank you, sir. Would Mr. Huffman please explain to the applicants in the audience the definition of a hardship?
A variance may be granted when it will not be contrary to the public interest and where, owing to special conditions, a literal enforcement of the provisions of this chapter will result in unnecessary and undue hardship. The term undue hardship has a specific legal definition in this context and essentially means that without the requested variance, the applicant will have no reasonable use of the subject property under existing development regulations. Personal medical reasons shall not be considered as grounds for establishing an undue hardship sufficient to qualify an applicant for a variance. Economic reasons may be considered only in instances where the landowner cannot yield a reasonable use and/or a reasonable return under the existing land development regulations. The applicant must answer a variance hardship worksheet with 6 questions. The Board of Adjustments will discuss these questions today with each applicant who has requested a variance.
Thank you, sir. I'd like to address our board members, the applicants, and the audience for a moment. The Board of Adjustments, as a quasi-judicial board with members appointed by the Brevard County Board of Commissioners, will utilize Robert's Rules of Order to conduct our meetings. The chair is asking all board members not to ask any questions while the applicants are making their presentations. Once the applicants have completed their presentation, we will begin board questioning with the board member who represents the applicant's district. When concluded, questioning is open to the full board. The chair will recognize each board member. Once all board members have completed their questioning, we will then open it to the audience who may be here to speak concerning the applicant's application. Anyone from the audience wishing to speak will be given the opportunity to address the board, but only once. At the conclusion of public comment, the applicant will be given additional time for rebuttal, as well as to present their final comments. Once completed, no further comment will be heard from the applicant or the public. We will not use a timer for this meeting. Instead, we are asking each speaker to be concise in what they have to say. It is important that you stay on subject and avoid information that is not relevant. All persons speaking must provide their name and address for the public record. Those wishing not to verbally state their address may ask the clerk at the podium for an address card. Please fill it out and return it to the clerk before speaking. Are there any questions from the board members about the chair procedures? Are there any questions from the applicants about the chair procedures? Any questions from the audience about the chair procedures? Seeing none, our first matter of business is to approve the minutes from the last meeting. What is your pleasure?
Mr. Chair, I'll move for approval.
We have a motion from Mr. Thomas to approve. Do we have a second?
A second.
We have a second by Ms. Mallard. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? And it passes. Mr. Bodie, may we have the first applicant that is requesting a variance?
Yes, item number 1, variance application 23V00028, Barry Moyer, request variance of Chapter 62, Article 6, Brevard County Code as follows. Variance number 1, Section 62-1372-5A to permit a variance to allow a swimming pool screen enclosure to be located forward of the front building line of the principal structure. Variance number 2, Section 62-1372-5A to permit an accessory structure, covered patio and carport to be located forward of the front building line of the principal structure. And these are in an RU-2-10 medium density multifamily residential zoning classification. And it's located at tax account number 2716288 in District 5.
Will the applicant please come to the podium? Please state your name and address for the record.
Barry Moyer, 108 Coral Way, Indialantic.
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm the evidence you're about to give this Board of Adjustments is the truth?
I do.
How may we help you?
I'd just like to get my variance approved. I had a variance done for a pool several months ago, but the pool company wasn't smart enough to put the screen room on there. Thus, I fired them, and so I need the screen room. The pool's already built, so it'd be nice if we could get the screen room approved. And then the rest of it is in between the pool and the house, basically covering the patio right outside the front door, which is now all full sun and super incredibly hot. You got the front door, it's like an oven. So that's it.
All right, you are in District 5, Mr. Huffman.
Yeah, I drove by, I think I drove by it back in February when you were here before. Still screened nicely with trees. There's a RV park there, big pile of dirt. Thought that dirt was there before, but maybe that's from the swimming pool.
Yeah, they put the pool dirt. I
Please
told them.
stay in the microphone.
They left the pool dirt on site. I'm hoping to spread that out at some point and maybe lift the front of the property a little bit, because if I do decide to put cottages on later, the height of the property needs to be 3 foot from the center of the road. So that's why I kept the rest of this stuff. So as soon as they're done with the pool, I'm going to have everything flattened out and graded off and put a beautiful palm tree forest in as my. And if the cottages are never granted, it'll always just stay the way it is. So it's no big deal.
Okay, that's all from me.
Anyone else have any questions?
I do.
Yes, sir.
I'm sure it's me and not you, believe me, but I'm a little lost on your second variance request. The covered patio and carport, is that an existing, are those existing structures?
The covered patio was existing, but it was, and I tore that down thinking we could just put it back up again. I didn't know I need a variance to put it back up. But along the front of the house, there's a 6-foot path. There was nothing existing there. So I'm putting the path in and then the carport so I can actually park my car and get out and walk in the house without getting wet. That's what that design's for, if you can follow that across the front of the house. So the sidewalk, the patio was in and the sidewalk was in, but there was just I tore the structure down because it was 40 years old. Or 30, whatever.
And that's not protruding out any further than the screen-in structure?
No,
or
the screen-in
pool?
structure is all in front of that.
Thank you.
I do have one curiosity question. When you came in February to get the pool variance, the carport was not thought of at that point?
No, actually, I changed the design of the pool because Poseidon pools took months to. We had to go through this. He didn't tell me I needed a variance. I asked this question before I even signed with him. I'm not going to need a variance. He was like, oh, no, I've been building pools for 20 years. So he didn't do any of that. I didn't want him to do the screen room. I just wanted him to build the pool. And then I changed the design of the pool. It was going to go out farther than it is now. I actually turned it to run in front of the house. It made the screen room smaller and just more economical, and the whole build just more economical. And also, I had a grotto and all kinds of stuff. I took that all off to just make it a smaller pool.
Okay. And the awning or patio that you tore off, is this patio bigger than that
No,
patio was?
exact same size.
It's the exact same size?
Yep.
Okay. All right, that's all questions I have. Sir, anything? Ms. Mallard, any questions?
None.
All right. If you stand to the side, and if you remember this is how we do this, just kind of stand to the side for a minute.
I wasn't here. My pool.
Okay. Is there anyone here in the audience that'd like to speak in favor or opposition to this variance request? Seeing none, please come back to the podium. Any final comments that you want to give us before we go forward?
No, sir.
Okay, thank you. You may have a seat.
Thank you.
What is your pleasure?
I make a motion that we approve the variances, both 1 and 2, as depicted here on the application and the survey.
Mr. Huffman has made a motion to approve both variances as depicted on survey. Do we have a second?
A second.
Ms. Mallard is second. Any discussion?
It fits well with the neighborhood, and anything he's building is behind the line of what we already approved on the previous variance, so he's not really encroaching on anybody.
Right. Though the carport's additional, it's within setbacks from the side setbacks, so I don't see an issue with it personally. But anyone else have any comments before I go through the 6 points? For those of you that have not been here before, the 6 questions that you answered, we do address those. It is the opinion of the chair as I read these, what our thoughts are on these, so just be aware of that. Here we go. Special conditions and circumstances exist which are not applicable to other lands, structures, or buildings in the applicable zoning classification. I don't believe there's any special circumstances or conditions that exist other than the fact the house is built toward the back of the property. If it had been built a little bit further front, but as far as the land is concerned, there's no special conditions. It would just be the fact of where the house is located that has created the need for this. That special conditions, circumstances not result from the actions of the applicant. You didn't build the house, right? So he did not do that. So that granting the variance request will not confer on the applicant any special privilege as denied by the provisions of this chapter of other lands, buildings, or structures in identical zone and classification. If we did approve this, we are not giving any special privilege as we take each on a case-by-case basis. Who they are doesn't matter. It's the situation that we are addressing. Number 4, that the literal enforcement of this provision and chapter would deprive the applicant of the rights commonly enjoyed by other properties in the identical zone and classification under the provisions of this chapter will constitute unnecessary and undue hardship on the applicant. It would not constitute an undue hardship. It would deny you the opportunity to have a pool, but it doesn't create a hardship on you in the sense that you wouldn't be able to use the land or be able to live in the property. Okay. That the variance granted is the minimum variance that will make possible the reasonable use of the land, building, or structure. It is the minimum variance that would be required for the structure that he is wanting to build. That granting of the variance will be in harmony with the general intent and purpose of this chapter, and that such variance will not be injurious to the area involved, otherwise detrimental to public welfare. I don't see as this is injurious to the area, that it would be out of sorts with the area. As I did last time, I like to go to the person that is over that for clarification.
Yeah, it's fine. It fits in well.
Okay. All right. So we have a motion and a second to approve both variance requests as depicted on survey. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Your variance passes. Mr. Bodie, may we have the next applicant that is requesting a variance?
Yes, item number 2, variance number 23V00029, Gene Harris, request variance of Chapter 62, Article 6, Brevard County Code, Section 62-2123B, to permit a variance of 9 feet from the required 20-foot setback for a swimming pool on a major water body in an RU-1-13 single-family residential zoning classification, and this is located at tax account number 2519416 in District 2.
Please come to the podium. And before we begin, I assume, Mr. Romano, you have, or I'm sorry. Let me change that. Mr. Harris, correct?
Stuart Buchanan, I'm agent for owner.
You're the agent. You've seen all of these.
We collected them, yes, the entire neighborhood.
All right.
Came out in support.
I just have to ask, make sure that you have seen those, you know what they say. Okay.
Yep.
Give us just a minute to take a look through this that you have given us.
And we apologize that they were not given ahead of time to go out with the board, with the packet.
Jennifer?
Oh.
These were distributed by email, right?
I believe, yeah, I believe.
Yeah.
Yes.
They were sent out.
Yes. All right. Please state your name and address for the record, sir.
My name is Stuart Buchanan. I am agent for owner. My working address is P.O. Box 1545, Titusville, Florida 32781.
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm the evidence that you're about to give this Board of Adjustments is the truth?
I do.
And he is good, gentlemen? Okay. Proceed, sir.
Thank you. The application you have before you, Chair and members of the board, is for a variance for a swimming pool. If you have your packet in front of you, if you would look at the aerial very quickly, the swimming pool is in the rear of the property, which faces the river. There is no abutting neighbor behind it. There is no neighbor behind it. It's the river. I just handed out a resolution of another swimming pool variance given to the neighbor at 110 West Bay. So that was a resolution previously approved by this board. There are, I believe, 29 supporting letters from the neighborhood, including even the neighbors on the other side of the river. So, as I said, there's no rear neighbor impact. There is no one in opposition that I'm aware of, and I'll be happy to answer any questions that you have. I do have one question for staff on the proposed setback. What was the number? The feet?
9.
9 feet?
Your variance is for 9 feet of the 20 feet.
I just want to check with my contractor very quickly. Is that correct?
The pole would be 10 feet 3 inches from the water,
Okay, all right, so that's,
from the seawall.
okay, that's fine, I got it. No, it's correct, the staff report's correct. I apologize. I'll be happy to answer any questions that you have.
You're in District 2, Mr. McCann.
Good afternoon. So I'm looking at the survey, and it appears that the pool is constructed somewhat to the rear of the residence and somewhat to the side yard of the residence.
That's correct.
That also appears to be the largest area of unconstructed property at the moment. It appears that you've considered, the only place to put this pool. How large is the pool?
How many gallons? I apologize, one moment.
Am I reading right? It's 1,289 square feet.
Yes, it's 19,000 gallons.
19,000 gallons. 1,289 square feet, correct.
And then the 9-foot variance request is only for the one side of the pool. It's for the whole pool, but really you only need it 9 feet at the one side. You have over 16 feet at the other end of the pool, away from the water line. Okay, thank you.
Mr. Huffman, any questions?
No.
Ms. Mallard?
No questions.
Mr. Thomas?
None of the applicant, just of staff.
Go ahead.
Is there any known environmental concerns by approving this?
We haven't got anything from natural resources that will come out during building permitting.
Thank you.
I do want to mention, since you gave us the previous resolution, they were asking for 3 feet.
Yes.
You're asking for 3 times that.
Yes, sir.
So I do want to bring that up, and I bring it up for a reason, okay? And don't take this as I'm in opposition. I talk about this constantly, is that we approve one person for 3 feet, the next person wants 9 feet, and then they'll bring your resolution in when they want 12 feet, okay? You know, and it just keeps growing. And that has always been a problem for me, is where do we stop? Where do we say we can't do this? And so that's the reason I bring it up, because you presented it as, you know, justification for requesting your variance. Problem is, yours is 3 times what they requested.
Yes, sir.
So that's comment, not question, and I probably should have waited for my comment time to do that. But I'm assuming that, and I did ask staff, you know, because you have a double frontage lot, it requires a larger setback than if you were not on a double frontage lot.
Yes.
And I did ask staff what that setback would be, because that helps me in my decisions. And if I remember what you said correctly, if it was not a double frontage lot, it would only be a 5-foot setback?
Yes, there's 5 foot off the side and rear property lines, but the pool couldn't be in any easements either.
Okay. Is there an easement involved here?
No, I don't see one on the survey.
Okay. So you're still going to be 11 feet setback on the shallow end of that property, is the way I'm putting it.
Yeah.
You understand what I'm saying, correct?
Yes, sir. The only variance to that is whether you measure from the seawall to the property line, but you're exactly correct.
Okay.
You are correct.
Okay. And then, as you stated, 16 feet on the other end, 14 feet in the center, and then 9 feet on that one end. Okay, that's all I have. Is there anyone here that'd like to speak in favor or opposition to this variance request? Seeing none, please return to the podium. Any final comments, sir?
I have no other comments, but I will answer any questions that the board may have.
We've done that already. I appreciate it. You may have a seat. What is your pleasure?
I make a motion to approve the variance request as depicted in the survey provided by the applicant.
We have a motion to approve. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. McCann to approve the variance request as depicted on survey. We have a second by Mr. Thomas. Any discussion? Okay. I'm going to hold my discussion till after I read the 6 points, then I'm just going to make a comment.
I got
Oh, you
one.
did. I'm sorry. Go ahead,
This-
please.
This is more of a comment about when this pool goes to get a building permit. There is a 6-foot swale which collects water and directs it away from the Indian River Lagoon. All of the lawn chemicals, all of the detritus that comes off of a living space, want to make sure that swale is rebuilt.
That would be looked at during the permit process by
Yes.
the Natural Resources Management Department and their codes.
Okay, just bringing it up.
It is my understanding that even though we might approve the variance today, he still has to go through permitting. He has to get permitted by the building department. He has to get permitted by Natural Resources, all of those things. And they will look into all of those and assure that they could still say no to him if they desired. So. Any other comments, questions, concerns? Here we go. Special conditions and circumstances exist which are not applicable to other land, structures, or buildings in the same applicable zoning classification. I don't see where there's any special conditions or circumstances. Probably the only one that you could bring up if you wanted to is the fact that it is a double frontage lot. But there are other double frontage lots in the area that would still have to meet the same setbacks. So for those reasons, I would say, in my opinion, there's not really any special circumstances. That If there were any special conditions or circumstances, they do not result of the actions of the applicant. Again, he hasn't done anything to create any special conditions or circumstances here other than wanting to build a pool in that area. Granting the variance will not confer on the applicant any special privilege that is denied by the provisions of this chapter of other lands, buildings, or structures in the identical zoning classification. It will not, if we were to approve it, it does not give any special privileges or any special consideration to him. Again, we take each of these on a case-by-case basis, regardless of who the individual is. I don't know him, I've never met him, so we're not giving him any special privileges. The literal enforcement of the provision, now if you were Elvis, that might be something different, but here we go. The literal enforcement of the provision of this chapter would deprive the applicant of rights commonly enjoyed by other provisions in the identical zoning classification of the provisions of this chapter will constitute an unnecessary and undue hardship on the applicant. Again, it does not create an undue and unnecessary hardship. It would just deprive him of being able to put in this size of a pool. He might have to adjust the size of the pool or put in a smaller pool or whatever. He just wouldn't be able to put in his size. So it wouldn't create a hardship on him if we said no. The variance is granted as the minimum variance that make possible reasonable use of land, building, or structure. It is the minimum variance required for the structure that he is desiring to build. That granting of the variance will be in harmony with general intent and purpose of this chapter, and such variance will not be injurious to the area involved or otherwise detrimental to public welfare. Due to the fact we have letters from all of the neighbors, I don't see that it's injurious to the area involved because they are saying it's okay. But again, Mr. McCann, your thoughts on that?
Yeah, my opinion is it doesn't,
Okay. Yeah.
my opinion is that it doesn't negatively impact the area.
Okay. I'm going to give you an explanation of my vote, just so you know. As I mentioned a minute ago, I get grave concerns when we approve variances. The reason being is because, again, as you brought in, there's one for 3 feet, now you're 9 feet, the next guy's going to want 15 feet, and he's going to use the fact we gave you 9 feet for justification for his 15 feet. And if we keep doing this, there's going to come a point when we have an issue, and we have problems, okay? For those reasons, I tend to lean against these types of variances. The only thing that has me in favor of it is when I ask what the setback would be otherwise, because if you were not a double frontage, it's only 5 feet, okay? Again, Natural Resources is going to look at this, Building Department's going to look at this, so I feel confident that they'll make sure that everything is going to be adequately protected, that we're not endangering the river environment and those types of things, okay? But I just want you to understand where I am on these things, and it's more, I probably get more into that with boat docks than I do a swimming pool, because boat docks encroach on the river or the canals, and they just keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and we have this happen all the time. So when we have this, I do bring this point up, and I do, probably to where everybody sitting on this board is just tired of hearing me hammer it. But I just want everybody aware, there comes a point when you've got to say no because of what's happening. So that's my opinion, okay? And I just wanted you to hear it and let it be addressed, okay? All right, we have a motion and a second to approve the variance as depicted on survey. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
And I'm going to give you an aye. All opposed say no, and your variance passes. Mr. Bodie, it is my understanding that the next applicant has requested that we continue their case to the October 18th meeting?
Yes, he's in the Air Force and is not able to attend and is requesting to be to the next BOA meeting, which would be October 18th.
May I please have a motion to continue G3 to the October 18th meeting?
So moved.
We have a motion by Mr. Thomas to continue the G3 case to the October 18th meeting. Do we have a second?
A second. Second.
We have a second by Ms. Mallard. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Mr. Bodie, may we have the next applicant as requesting a variance?
Item number 4, variance application 23V00031, William Jackson Revocable Trust. Request variance to Chapter 62, Article 6, Brevard County Code, Section 62-2109C, to permit a variance of 2 feet over the maximum 4 foot allowed for a fence within the front setback in an EU-2 estate use residential zoning classification. And this is located at tax account number 2716595 in District 5.
Would the applicant please come to the podium? And when your case is being read, if you want to come onto the podium, that is fine. Yes, sir. Please state your name and address for the record.
It's William Arlen Jackson, 3500 North Riverside Drive, Indialantic, 32903.
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm the evidence you're about to give this Board of Adjustments is the truth?
I do.
And how may we help you today?
So, the house that I'm in, I was so lucky to buy it from my parents. They built it back in 1969. The house is located on Riverside Drive, just south of the O'Galley Causeway, right on the water, right on the river. It was the only home there for years. There's nothing between the house and O'Galley Boulevard. I was in 9th grade at Hoover when my parents built that home. And the nearest lot or the nearest home north of us was probably 4 lots to the north on Riverside. So, and just to kind of tell you how old this house is, we used to sit in the breakfast room to see a red fox come out at dusk when we were having dinner. That's how many years ago this was. So my parents spent quite a bit of time building and designing this classic Georgian home. So it's a classic Georgian home. I remember going on trips with my parents to Williamsburg, Virginia to take photos. I remember my dad building a model of this house out of balsa wood for a year. So I'll get to the point here. I know I'm kind of getting wordy, but I just want to tell you, the history of the house. So it's got 12-12 gable in the middle, 10-12s. I mean, 4-column, old brick. And thanks to Paul, I provided you some photos of the front of the property. So the way my parents designed the home is they cleared most of the property. So that fence, the way that fence looks is part and parcel to the architecture of that home. And my dad had this great colonel who loved to do manual labor build this fence back in the mid-70s. And it's mostly still there. That's how well constructed it is. But that front section is going. I can't really save it. It's 5 feet high, it's wood, and it was built close to the property line. At some point it's probably 1 or 2 feet from the property line, at some points maybe 5 feet. So, but if you look at the photos that Paul was nice enough to accommodate me with, you can see that there's no impending issue of people getting out of that driveway or into that driveway because there's literally, per American Fence.
Hang on just a minute. We do not have any of the photos he's talking about that he said we have.
I have them. Here, I can share those with you. You can pass them.
If you hand them to me, I can't give them back. They got to be part of the.
That's fine.
Okay.
I got, I've got them all saved. But
Just hand them here and I'll just pass them down.
so you can see where the fence is right now. So that fence has been there since the early 70s. And this code section wasn't there. There was no houses there. So trying to get in and out, you got 55 to 65 feet because of the county easement there. There's no impending issue of seeing down Riverside Drive or up Riverside Drive, getting out or getting in. And what would happen, I could go through the 6 factors, but there is a brick post, you'll see it there in one of the photos, that's on line with that fence. That angle, that brick post looks not that large, it's 15 feet high. there's a door that you walk into that brick post, there's a water softener. That brick post would cost me 25 grand to move it. It's on line with the fence. And there was, you know, if I was having to adhere to the code, a 4-foot fence, I'm doing an aluminum fence too, you can totally see, it's like an iron rod fence, wrought iron fence, and you can see through it. But if I had to do a 4-foot, it would look way out of line with that Georgian home. You'd have this puny little fence and this grand Georgian home, because you can see it all together. It's all on site. So, should I just go through the 6 factors?
No, I'll do that.
Yeah, so I'm just trying to think, you know, there's a lot of
We've got your response, so we've read them, we know what you're saying.
yeah, there's a lot of hardship here. I mean, like, the size of the fence, I'd have to take down 25 feet probably or so on the sides. I'd have to have that all demolated. That'd cost me a few $1,000. I'd lose some trees outside the fence that I've had a wood borer problem there on the pine trees. You know, I want to take care of those pine trees and not lose more. I have an oak, and all that's going to be outside that fence.
Okay.
Anyway, I could go on and on and on. Whatever you want to hear, I'd be happy to discuss it with you.
You're in District 5, Mr. Huffman.
I have driven many times by your property there. Hadn't noticed that one in particular, but my firm has a engineering project in that area that we've studied ad nauseum. You're going to replace that with a wrought iron fence?
Well, that's
It's-
going to,
It's aluminum, but it's black aluminum
Right.
tubing?
right,
Yeah, okay.
correct.
And you're putting it in the same line where the fence is now?
Same exact line, yes, sir.
Which looks like you could pull a tractor trailer out from that fence to the roadway and still
Yeah,
have plenty of sight line, as
Absolutely.
is most of the properties down through there.
Yep.
Okay, no,
What's the height of the current fence?
5 feet. It's wood. Yep. This is
Right.
a little bit taller. I mean, going down would, especially like, you know, this wrought iron look with the spear point, you know, that's a grand looking fence to go with, you know, Georgian home, grand Georgian home.
Sure.
If you're a 4-foot with spear point, it's just gonna look
Okay.
way out of line.
Mr. McCann?
No questions.
Ms. Mallard?
No questions.
Mr. Thomas?
Just a comment, I think that it will enhance the area, not be a detriment.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Please stand to the side for a moment, please. Uh-huh. Is there anyone here that wishes to speak in favor or opposition to this variance request? Seeing none, any final comments before we vote?
No, sir.
You may have a seat. What's your pleasure?
I make a motion that we approve the variance for an increased and fence height as depicted on the application and the survey.
All right, we have a motion by Mr. Huffman to approve the variance as depicted on survey. Do we have a second?
A second.
Ms. Mallard has seconded. Any discussion? All right, let me do our 6 points. Special conditions and circumstances would exist which are not applicable to other land, structures, or buildings in the applicable zoning classification. I don't see that there are any special conditions or circumstances that exist other than maybe the type of home that he has built there that he's talked in depth about to us. Special conditions and circumstances do not result from the actions of the applicant. Again, there are no special conditions and circumstances at this point. The granting the variance will not confer on the applicant any special privilege as denied by the provisions of this chapter that the lands, buildings, or structures identical zoning classification. We are not granting him any special privileges should we approve this variance, again, as we take each of these on a case-by-case basis. That the literal enforcement of the provision of this chapter would deprive the applicant of rights commonly enjoyed by other properties in identical zoning classification on the provisions of the chapter and constitute an unnecessary and undue hardship on the applicant. I don't see that would deprive him of any rights that anybody else has in the area if we said no, nor do I believe that it would create an unnecessary undue hardship. It would just simply say you can't put up a 6-foot fence. You'd have to stay with a 4-foot. That the variance granted is the minimum variance that make possible the reasonable use of land, building, or structure. Again, it is the minimum variance required for the structure that he is desiring to build. That granting of the variance will be in harmony with the general intent and purpose of the chapter, and that such variance will not be injurious to the area involved or otherwise detrimental to public welfare. We've already heard from Mr. Huffman, as he has stated, that he believes it would be applicable for that property, and I believe, as Mr. Thomas said, that it would actually enhance the property rather than take away anything. I will state as a comment that when we're talking about fence height, the first thing I look at is, does it prohibit being able to see traffic, et cetera? In this case, it doesn't. It's far enough off the road that I don't see what the issue would be if we were to say yes to it. Do you mind if I ask? I understand most places the reason it's a 4-foot height is, traffic, sidewalks, et cetera. Is there a reason for the 4-foot height in this area specifically?
It's not specific to this area, but 4 foot, there's an aesthetic reason to have a 4-foot fence versus a 6-foot.
So people can see over and see the river or the ocean or whatever?
This is to get out into the traffic and such and make sure that if there's a sidewalk and such running beside it, that you see people walking by. It's for safety reasons.
Okay.
This also has a 100-foot right-of-way, so his property line is quite a bit back from the 2-lane asphalt road that's there.
Right.
Although they could make it into a 4-lane road or even bigger if they ever decided to.
I mean, even what I'm looking at, he's probably at least 25 feet from the sidewalk even.
Yeah, it doesn't show it on the survey, the sidewalk, so I'm not
I'm
real
just
sure
looking at the
exactly.
picture that he
Right.
provided.
Okay.
And it's a guess. No, that's not accurate. It's just a guess. But I would see he's far enough off that sidewalk that it wouldn't be a detriment to somebody walking down the sidewalk or anything. Would you agree?
Yes.
All right. Any other comments, questions? All right. We have a motion and a second to approve as depicted on survey. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? No. And your variance passes, sir. It is our pleasure.
Okay.
Mr. Brody, may we have the next applicant that is requesting a variance?
Yes, item number 5 is Marian Lynn Allred, request variance of Chapter 62, Article 6, Brevard County Code, as follows. Variance number 1, 0.66 feet from the required 7.5-foot side south setback for an accessory structure. Variance number 2, 0.15 feet from the required 5-foot separation distance for an accessory structure in an RU-1-11 single-family residential zoning classification. And this is application number 23V00032. Location is tax account number 2514500 in District 2.
Please please state your name and address for the record.
I'm Marian Lynn Allred. The address is 915 Newfound Harbor in Merritt Island.
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm the evidence you're about to give this Board of Adjustments is the truth?
Yes, sir, I do.
And how may we help you?
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I just bought this property back on June 15th, and to be honest, I kind of inherited the issues that not only the previous owner, but now the second previous owner, who's the one who actually built this structure. I'm trying to resolve all those issues here with the county. This structure, it's an RV carport. It's been here for over 20-plus years. It hasn't been changed or modified, at least according to an original variance applicant from the man I bought this property from. I think essentially, if you're looking at it, we're talking about it's 3 inches roughly too close, 3 inches roughly too close to the house, maybe 7 inches or 8 inches or so too close to the property line. So, and I don't think, based upon talking with the neighbors who I think originally filed complaints against the previous owner, I don't think there's ever actually been a complaint against this carport. What I think is that when Mr. Brody and his staff were looking at the variance request for another structure, they're the ones who looked at the survey and realized, hey, this thing is 3 inches too close to the house, and all that stuff. So that kind of generated the issue that I'm here trying to resolve and request a variance for. You know, basically, I don't know that anyone's ever complained in the 20-plus years. None of the neighbors, nobody from Merritt Islands officials, no one here from Brevard County. It's just that when the previous owner got popped for doing multiple illegal Airbnbs, this was an unintended consequence of his request for variance hearing on another structure. But I, as new owner, am just trying to get everything in line with the county so none of us are having problems with Mr. Bodie and his office. Okay. And so that's why I'm requesting the variance.
Before I go to the board with this, do you want to address anything that she said, sir?
Sure, I can. So Paul works for me. Paul doesn't have a staff. I'm the planning and
sorry.
zoning manager. So if you remember, this was brought, or I should say this property was in the process of being sold to Ms. Allred, and that is correct. She inherited some of the issues that were brought to our attention. So there was I don't know if the code enforcement case is still pending. I believe that is
according to the document it is.
yeah, I believe that has been remedied. However, when someone brings in a code enforcement, we look at the whole property, not just what is in front of us. And so in doing so, we realized that there were some other variances that needed to happen to fix all the issues with the property, not just with the Airbnb and so forth. So that's the reason why the other variances that are required to fix this.
Okay.
May I ask, excuse me, sir, who are you? Part of the issue of being brand new is I've got these special magistrates and
He
so
is
stuff that
Mr.
I
Jeffrey
don't.
Ball. He is the director of zoning and planning
Okay.
for the.
Planning and zoning
yeah,
manager.
I don't have a lot of paperwork that all this started out with. I'm just literally kind of in this only paperwork. So I'm not sure who's doing with what.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're in District 2, so that would be Mr. McCann.
Good afternoon.
Afternoon, sir.
When you were making your presentation, it rang a bell as another variance request that had been submitted in the past that we were looking at. So this is the variance request in which the previous owner was attempting to, I guess, legitimize his Airbnb activities.
Was it the one, are we referring to when you tried to turn the building in the back into a guest house, or actually did it and got caught?
Yes.
Yeah.
So what can you just explain what the structure in the back of the house is?
I don't know what it originally was. I assume that when it was built over 20 years ago, I'm assuming it was built the same time the carport was built. It was a cinder block home. It's got stucco, and apparently when I first went to the property in June, it did have a kitchen in there and a bathroom and a shower. And part of the thing with the code enforcement that it had to be turned back into just an accessory structure, just a building. And so in talking with Mr. Bodie and Mr. Long, I ripped everything out that was any kind of cooking thing that would have turned it into a kitchen, because they said the kitchen had to go. And Mr. Bodie said a wall that had been built between, well, in the middle of basically the structure. I ripped the wall down so that it's just an open through area. And so that, in my understanding, and me paying the fine that originally was incurred by the previous owner, that should have cleared that particular issue up with the accessory structure going from a guest house back to just an accessory structure. And that's what it's being used for now, just storage and spider house.
That's all the questions I have.
Thank you, sir.
One of the things was that the previous owner had turned, it appeared to be an accessory garage or storage shed into a guest house. It didn't meet setbacks for guest house. Guest house cannot be rented out. He was renting it out as an Airbnb, so it had setbacks for a guest house. And Marian ended up rectifying all the problems with the guest house, converting it back into just a storage building.
Okay. Are there other questions? Ms. Mallard?
None.
Mr. Thomas?
No, sir.
Mr. Huffman?
You mentioned that there were complaints from the neighbor. I'm assuming it's the neighbor to the south of you, the one that's next to the carport.
in talking with that neighbor, there were no complaints, because she told me we never complained about the carport. They were complaining about the individuals, which apparently are not some of our finest citizens here. You know, they were coming onto their property, and the sheriff's department was having to be called multiple times. So the complaint was actually for the accessory structure that got turned into the guest house by the previous owner. And those individuals, at least one, had gone around the fence, and then apparently the sheriff's department was over there multiple times based upon statements I've got from the other neighbors. But to my knowledge, she said she had never complained, because I did, when I talked to them, I said, you guys are going to get the variance thing in the mail. It's not about the guest house. That is strictly a storage building now. It's about this, excuse me, this carport.
So her complaints were about activity, not this
No, sir.
building being too close to their
No,
property.
and I actually have a text for her. She had to
That's
leave
fine.
on an emergency, that she said if they need to sign something on my behalf and for my behalf, she would be happy to do that.
Okay.
But no, sir, those complaints were for the guest house and the unsavory individuals living there.
Noted.
If there's no other questions, can you stand to the side for just a minute? Is there anyone here that'd like to speak in favor or opposition to this variance request? Seeing none, you may return to the microphone. Any final comments?
Yes, sir, I recognize that, you know, this doesn't quite meet the definition of a hardship. Like I said, basically, this thing's been there for 20 years. Nobody's complained. It just kind of got discovered while they were looking at another issue and another variance. It is going to cost several $1,000s to take this thing down, because it is right next to the house, right next to the pool equipment, right next to the electrical panel and box. And on the south side of the house at the property line, that's where the power pole is, and that's where the transformer is. So it's not like some standalone structure where you can just get a guy to come in there, hit it with a bulldozer or something, it'll fall over, they can pick the pieces up. It's going to have to be deconstructed, which is going to cost a lot of money. I'm betting at least north of $5,000 in the few conversations I've had with people. I think that money, for me personally and for the neighborhood, would be better spent in continuing to clean up the property, repaint the house, fix the fence out front and the lighting. Because the nicer my property looks, the nicer neighborhood looks, the better property resale values. So I'm asking for that benefit, that if we're going to have to spend money, let's do something that, you know, quite frankly, is going to help the neighborhood, not just, no one's going to be benefited if I rip this RV carport down.
Okay.
You know, it's just going to cost me money, sir.
Thank you very much.
Thank
You may
you.
have a seat. What is your pleasure?
I'll make a motion to approve the request for both variances as depicted in the survey.
We have a motion by Mr. McCann to approve both variances as depicted on survey. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Thomas has seconded. Any discussion?
Yeah, I recognize that we often talk about percentages, but in fact, here we're
Yeah.
talking about inches.
Yes.
So I really don't see this as a significant.
And we're also talking about structure that had been there for 20 years, and had the gentleman not been doing something illegal, we probably wouldn't even be talking about this right now.
Can we ask one more question?
We may.
What's your intent? Are you buying this?
Please come back to the microphone. I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
sorry.
She already purchased it.
Well, no. Did you purchase this as an investment? Do you intend to
No,
live
sir, I
there?
Good Lord
Okay.
willing, it's my retirement home.
Okay, that's
If it
it.
doesn't kill me first trying to clean it up.
No, you'll be good. All right. Thank you.
Thank you for coming back to the microphone. Appreciate that. Any other questions or comments? Let's zip through our 6 points here. Special conditions and circumstances exist which are not applicable to other lands, building structures, and the applicable zoning classification. Probably the only special circumstances and conditions that exist, in my opinion, are the fact that she didn't put these structures there. They were already there, and she's having to deal with them due to activity that was illegal being done on that property before she acquired it. That the special conditions and circumstances not result of the actions of the applicant, and they do not. That granting the variance requested will not confer on the applicant any special privilege. That is denied by the provisions of this chapter that the lands, buildings, or structures in identical zoning classification. Again, we are not giving her any special privileges or rights that we do not consider with each and every individual as these cases are brought before us. That the little enforcement of this provision of this chapter would deprive the applicant the rights commonly enjoyed by other properties in identical zoning classification under provisions of the chapter will constitute an unnecessary and undue hardship on the applicant. I've got to state that in our undue hardship clause, it says that we cannot take monetary factors into consideration when we consider this. But in that being stated, in this case, if there was any undue hardship that would be put on you, it would be the fact that you would have to spend to tear down structures that have been there for over 20 years. That the variance granted is the minimum variance that will make possible the reasonable use of the land, building, or structure, and it is the minimum variance that would be required to legitimize the structures that have already been in existence. That granting of the variance will be in harmony with general intent and purpose of this chapter, and that such use variance will not be injurious to the area involved or otherwise detrimental to public welfare. Again, these structures have been there for over 20 years. I don't see how approving the variance would be detrimental to the public welfare or injurious to the area since they've already been there for 20 years, unless there was something there seeping into the environment or something, and we don't have any indication of that. So. All right, any further comments or discussion? Seeing none, we're going to call for a vote. We have a motion and a second to approve the variance as depicted on survey. Do we, all in favor, say aye? Aye. Aye. Any opposed? And your variance passes, ma'am. Mr. Bodie, it's my understanding that the item that was continued from 8/16/23 to this meeting is being requested to be tabled again?
Staff is requesting this to be continued because the survey that has been provided was provided after the advertisement for it. So we will need to re-advertise based on the resubmitted survey to advertise for the correct variances.
Are you the folks that's involved in this? Okay, okay. So I need to make it clear so that you don't think we're giving any special rights to anyone. We were provided a survey, but the survey came in too late. Because of that, we have to, by law, re-advertise the meeting so that anyone that wants to look at said documents or whatever have the opportunity to do that before the meeting takes place. We understand what we're doing? Okay.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, so the revised survey that was provided identified new variances that were not
A part of?
the initial
Okay.
application.
Okay. So are we moving this to the November meeting then?
No, it will be October 18th.
The October 18th meeting?
Yes.
Okay. So it will still meet the criteria that's necessary for it to be on that meeting? Okay.
Yes.
Okay, just making sure. All right, we need a motion to move G6 to continue the G6 case to the October 18th meeting.
I'll make a motion to continue item G6 to the October 18th meeting.
We have a motion by Mr. McCann. Do we have a second?
A second.
Ms. Mallard has seconded. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? And it is done. Anything, I don't have anything else on my agenda. Anything further? In that case, we are adjourned.
The opinions expressed by any member of the public during any period of public comment do not necessarily reflect the views or opinions of the Board of County Commissioners of Brevard County, Florida, Space Coast Government Television, or the program sponsor, and are solely those of the presenter. The Board of County Commissioners of Brevard County, Florida, Space Coast Government Television, and the program sponsor hereby expressly disclaim any and all responsibility or liability for any defamatory or slanderous statements expressed by any member of the public during any such period.